Matt Whitaker, former U.S. Acting Attorney General.
This is such a great conversation about America, our future, what's going to save our republic.
We have a great football player. Matt Whitaker is here. Matt.
They tried to bury me. They didn't realize I was a seed.
It's a touchdown, Whitaker.
Former acting U.S. Attorney General.
Under President Trump.
I'm going to be an unwavering supporter of law enforcement.
Welcome to Liberty and Justice with your host, Matt Whitaker.
Welcome to Liberty and Justice. I'm your host, Matt Whitaker. I'm joined this week by my good friend, Daniel Cameron, Kentucky Attorney General. How are you, Daniel?
General, I'm doing great, and it's always good to see you and glad to spend some time with you and your viewers.
Yeah, this is Liberty and Justice. You're going to be episode 43. Okay. And we've had some, distinguished VIPs on here, but none more than you, because I think we'll look back at this discussion as what launched you, onto the, great things. From
your lips to God's ears, my friend. Huh?
I got big plans for you, my friend. You are in a great position. I mean, you're not only you elected statewide as the Kentucky Attorney General, and you're doing great work in that role. You're also recently announced, I guess kind of recently, that you're running for governor of the great state of Kentucky. And we're going to get into all of that. Let's start with kind of what you've been able to accomplish as Attorney General. Kind of, is there anything that you would point to as kind of your an example of your service to the people, to the Commonwealth and the people of your great state?
Yeah, well, I've almost been in office for 3 years now, and it's been a great honor to serve as the Attorney General and stand up for the constitutional rights of our citizens and also the conservative values that we hold so dear. You talk about some of the things that we've been able to do. When I took the oath of office at the end of 2019, I said there aren't going to always be easy answers that can't come out of this office, but we're going to do our job without fear or favor. Now, when I made that statement, I didn't realize 2020 was around the corner, but consistently we did our job without fear or favor. And when our governor here in Kentucky decided to take the Constitution and in many ways disregard it, when he shut down churches, which was a unconstitutional decision and infringed upon our First Amendment rights, when he told people that they couldn't leave the state without coming back in quarantine for a period of 14 days, which was another unconstitutional move. I was proud of our office's decision to go into federal court and challenge those executive orders and get those overturned. And after 9 days in the church context, the church doors were open. Folks were able to go back into Sunday services and Wednesday night services and all the other services at church. And when we went into federal court and ultimately got the travel restriction overturned, folks were able to travel freely, as is their granted right under our Constitution. And so those are some of the moments that I'm exceedingly proud of. And of course, look, this as your time as Attorney General, one of the things that has been just gripping to so many parts of our country has been the drug epidemic. And I'm proud of the work that our office has done to help bring dollars into Kentucky to confront the cycles of addiction and break those cycles of addiction that we've seen plague our people for far too long. In fact, I just met with a group today that is doing some preventative care within the opioid context in helping break those cycles. And so we've got a litany of things that we've been able to do over these last 3 years in standing up for the citizens of Kentucky and protecting their constitutional rights and standing up for those conservative values. And I've been honored, again, to serve in this role. And of course, my wife and I made the decision earlier this year to jump into the governor's race. And we want to take that approach where we stand firm on our Bill of Rights and our Constitution and stand firm as a leader that cares about the interest of Kentucky. We want to take that approach to the governor's office, and hopefully we'll have an opportunity to do that.
Yeah, and that's so important. I mean, you're doing such great work, and obviously, advancing the rule of law and standing up for constitutional rights couldn't be a higher priority, I think, for Attorney General. I mean, that is, you go to court and you say, this is the law, this is the Constitution. You let the judges ultimately decide that case, but that's your primary duty, is to protect those rights, make sure the state isn't infringing on those constitutional rights, and so it's not necessarily about battling, the governor. It's more making sure that each role is performed, and that if something is illegal or unconstitutional that's done by the executive branch, you advance that interest on behalf of your fellow citizens. I think that's. I was watching that. I was watching you do that. Obviously, we were all in the middle of a unprecedented pandemic, and it was it was so good that you could protect those fundamental rights, including the right to worship. So kudos to you. You are certainly a warrior for the Constitution and the rule of law. And that's the kind of thing I like to highlight on this show. Now that we're in episode 43, I believe, of this first year. So what else, as you're getting out and talking to your fellow citizens, what are you hearing? What's the mood in Kentucky? And what do you think the state needs right now?
Well, it is, we've had the opportunity to travel all over the Commonwealth. And as I noted earlier, we've got 120 counties. And so it is a big Commonwealth, a big state to get through. In fact, tomorrow I'll be down in West Kentucky to talk to some folks about some of the tornadoes that we experienced at the end of last year. And Mackenzie and I have traveled over to Eastern Kentucky, where there's been some flooding. Outside of the context of those storms that have obviously hit the western part of our state and the eastern part pretty hard, other issues that I think we see emerging is this sort of constant tension that we see that because of the hostility of the Biden administration as it relates to the energy interest of our respective states. Here in Kentucky, it's a really big deal because we are the 7th largest generator of coal in the country. And because of that, we have the 12th lowest energy costs in the nation. And so whenever we hear that the Biden administration wants to destroy the fossil fuels industry, that is directly going to impact and devastate the economy of Kentucky. And as I travel the state, I hear a lot from folks that are worried about an administration in Washington, D.C. that wants to do that and change the economy of Kentucky, but also hear from folks that are concerned about not having a governor that's willing to stand up to the administration as they try to change or shift our energy priorities in this nation. And so that is something that we've been focused on. This has become most acute as it relates to what you know of as the ESG movement, the environmental social governance movement. It's really a partnership, if you will, between the Biden administration and a lot of asset managers that aren't using their money. Matt, you know this. They're using the money of retirees. They're using, here in Kentucky in particular, using the pensions of teachers, firefighters, and police officers to fund, in many ways, this climate virtue signaling. They want to shut down our economy, but use their money or use the pensioners' money to do so. And so we've stood at the front of an effort to stop that, because again, we know that it's going to hurt our public employees. We know that it's going to hurt our economy. It's going to take away that competitive advantage that we have in the energy sphere. So this is a critical issue. Another thing that I hear about constantly is that we saw some loss in the education context. There are a lot of teachers that are working really hard here in Kentucky during the midst of COVID, but they were given a bad hand to play because our governor shut down schools for a period of time and told everybody they needed to be at home learning. You've seen reports out that have demonstrated that over these last couple of years, we've lost some ground in our education standards because of those decisions that were made at the front end of COVID. And of course, I mentioned the challenges that we have as it relates to opioids and drugs. We've got a porous southern border, yet our governor here in Kentucky says nothing about that. But we know that there is a direct correlation between the drugs that are coming over the southern border and making their way into Kentucky. Look, we lost 2,250 individuals to overdoses in 2021. A lot of that was because those drugs were laced with fentanyl. Fentanyl's coming from our southern border. We've got to have a secure southern border. And we've got to have a governor that's willing to speak out on these issues that are so impactful and important to the long-term progress of the Commonwealth of Kentucky.
Yeah. A lot of good stuff in what you just said. I want to go back to the ESG issue. As someone that I guess was raised pre-environmental movement and global climate change. In fact, when I was growing up, they were worried about a new ice age and a return of glaciers. And so it's, how quickly things have dramatically changed. But, these money managers using other people's money to try to force these corporate changes. And I know that you just, I think, won a victory. Was I reading on your Twitter profile or that you one of the money managers has backed out in order to maintain the business that they do with Kentucky?
Yeah, Vanguard has made the decision to withdraw from one of these net zero alliances, and we see that as a big win for Kentucky's for our needs. Again, it helps protect the pensions of teachers and firefighters and police officers. It helps us maintain our energy leadership position because, again, Kentucky relies very heavily on coal and the generation of coal that provides money for families and helps us have that competitive advantage. It's the reason that we've been able to bring in some of these projects here recently is because we have that lower cost energy that companies can rely on. And so, yes, this was a very big deal to have Vanguard pull out of that net zero alliance. And I think it speaks volumes about the ability of my office and the work that we've done to make significant impact and have significant benefit to Kentuckians. Right.
And I still can't quite understand how, if I'm a leader of a company, how me, sort of doing these ESG things that reduce shareholder value is somehow consistent with my fiduciary duties as a corporate executive in maximizing, company value. It's, I think that day is still ahead of us for that to be ultimately resolved. But, I continue to it's inconsistent with, I think, what at least the fundamentals of business in the United States of America has always been. And so, I am very happy that you were able to, put some pressure on these money managers and for them to understand, the people that are retired, that's whose, pensions they are managing. Obviously, you're not asking them how they feel about ESG. No. They always emphasize actually the E, the environmental piece. They don't think about the S and the G. And I think that's one of the biggest kind of tells of this whole movement is it's an end run to try to advance, the radical climate change agenda, through money managers investing in companies that do the virtue signaling.
That's exactly right. I mean, it's, to your point, it is a partnership between the federal government, the Biden administration, and a lot of these asset managers that have this particular worldview. And the stunning thing is that they, again, are not using their money to do it. They're not going into states and proposing ideas in front of state legislators, which is the laboratories for democracy. They're not doing that. They're trying to circumvent that sort of process by using, again, which is the completely stunning thing about this, is using the money of retirees that have no idea this is going on. And that's why it's so important, for your show and, myself and others to speak about this, because the more that we talk about it, for the public's general knowledge and information, it's a good thing, because again, you see the results or the fruits of that labor when Vanguard decides to move out or withdraw from this net zero alliance.
Yeah. And so how is the pace of the election going? I mean, I think it's, talk a little bit about, since you have off-year's elections, your general election is going to be in the fall of 2023. I think you announced right before or sometime, before the 2022 midterms. How has that been received? Is it received with confusion, like people like me that are like, wait, when is that? How do you make sure that you distinguish as you're, that bumping up against another election as you're heading into an election year yourself?
Yeah, Matt, that's a great point. In fact, my wife's sister, my sister-in-law, she's a teacher. One of the folks that cleans her office or her room had written up on the board, Daniel Cameron for governor 2022. And it's just just a small example of sort of the confusion that's out there. Our race, as you note, is in first, the primary is in May of next year, and then the general elections in November of next year. But we thought, and I say we because Mackenzie and I thought that we wanted to get in as early as we could. That helps for a couple of different reasons. It allows us to start raising money. And of course, if anybody out there wants to, help us out, we've got a website you can go to and learn more about our family and our values. And
CameronForKentucky.com, right?
CameronForKentucky.com.
All right. I'll link that in the show notes for sure. And I would highly recommend to, my viewers and listeners that they go to CameronForKentucky.com and support this great guy. And we'll do that at the end as well. But they should get on there, learn more about you. Obviously, you're free to tell them anything they need to know right now, so they don't have to read the website. But
and so we wanted to get in because we think, again, based on what we've done over these last 3 years, that we are in a strong position to demonstrate what Kentucky needs in terms of conservative, common sense leadership. Somebody that's going to stand up for the energy interest of Kentucky, someone that's going to stand up for parents' abilities to be involved in the educational opportunities of their children, somebody that's going to stand up to the opioid epidemic and encourage and ask the Biden administration and request that they do everything they can to secure that southern border, because we are desperately in need of that help here in Kentucky. And you're going to have somebody that's going to stand up for conservative values and constitutional rights. Again, we think that we have a track record to demonstrate to demonstrate what we would do as governor if we're fortunate to get there. And so I, again, encourage folks to jump on board. This is going to be, as I noted previously, there are going to be 3 major races in the country next year. It's going to be a race for governor in Mississippi. I'm confident that Governor Tate Reeves is going to win re-election there. There's going to be an open seat in Louisiana. A good friend of mine, Jeff Landry, is going to be running there.
He's been on this show before.
Yeah, I know. And so he's going to be running there. I think he's going to be in strong position to lead there. So a lot of interest is going to be paid to this race in Kentucky. And we've got to have the right candidate, somebody who's been in the arena, who's taken the slings and arrows, who's been willing to stand up and do what's right by the people here in Kentucky. I hope to build an alliance of governors, if you will, that can stand up for the interest of our states, our respective states, but also stand up to the excesses that we see coming out of the Biden administration. I hope to work with Governor DeSantis and Governor Glenn Youngkin and Governor-elect Sarah Huckabee Sanders, again, Governor Kemp in Georgia, again, to build this alliance that fights every day for the values of our respective states and stands firm against some of the intrusions that we've seen from the federal government.
Yeah, and I'm sure you can count on my home state governor, Kim Reynolds of Iowa, to join that coalition of the willing.
Kim and Governor Reynolds is great. Of course, I know she's at the helm of RGA now, and she's really been at the forefront of a lot of different important issues, including educational opportunity. And so yes, I'm excited to build this alliance, if you will.
Yeah, and I always brag on this show, and since you're captive on this show as my guest, I look to Iowa as to what we have done to implement kind of conservative policies that the people are flourishing under right now, whether it's education, whether it's, small business growth and development, whether it's, just freedom generally, and the agenda that goes with that. I recommend it to you, but I know, there are so many things that when you get in the governor's mansion, you are going to implement a positive agenda that helps all Kentucky families, all Kentucky workers, and most importantly, and I think it should go without saying, but I think you and I need to emphasize this in supporting, the men and women of law enforcement.
Absolutely. Yes. I mean, I've, just been blown away by just over these last few years, just the work that our law enforcement community does to make sure that we're able to sleep soundly in our homes. And they sacrifice every day when they wear that badge and they don that uniform to protect and serve our communities. And I'm so grateful for the way that they do it. Look, you need leadership that is willing to spread and share that message. That that nationally, and we've experienced this here in Kentucky, that the morale of a lot of folks in the law enforcement community is low right now. Some of our top law enforcement agencies have lost numbers because folks just don't necessarily want to engage in this type of work anymore. But I think if you have a governor that is constantly willing to talk about the amazing work that these men and women do when they don those badges and uniforms, I think that will help. I think we got to make sure that we're paying them adequately and doing other things to make sure that their recruiting stays high. Okay.
Well, I think the only thing left to talk about is for the second straight year, my beloved Iowa Hawkeyes are playing the Kentucky Wildcats, who are coached by a former teammate of mine, Mark Stoops. Yeah. And I went last year in Orlando, and I don't know if I'm going to make it to Nashville this year, but if you guys can score any points on offense, I think you might be able to beat us, because right now our offense is.
Matt, I will say at some point, Nashville is going to have to make a determination about whether they're going to call the bowl the Music City Bowl or the Wildcats Bowl, and because the UK finds themselves there a lot. It's kind of like a second home to the University of Kentucky right now. But I look, it'll be a good matchup, and UK's obviously with Coach Stoops at the helm has had some pretty successful years over the last during his tenure, and I'm excited for them. U of L is going to be in the Fenway Bowl and is going to be playing against Cincinnati, and so it'll be a good couple of days for the Commonwealth, that's for sure.
Yeah, that is. I as you know, I'm a big college football fan, and I'm excited about not only the playoffs, but I love the bowl games as a former player. Obviously, the bowl games were a huge treat to go to after a successful season. And, most of the games I went to were in California, which was very nice, in the winter. I don't know how Nashville is. I don't think I've ever been there in late December, but
it's a little cold. It's a little cold. Yeah. When I was playing, I guess we went to the Orange Bowl and the Gator Bowl and Liberty
Florida's
Bowl.
Nice.
Yep. Yeah, Florida. But so Memphis, that was our first year, and it was blistering cold for the Liberty Bowl. But we found some warmer climates to have some bowl games in too. So
yeah, well, that's fantastic. Well, again, Daniel Cameron, current Attorney General of the great state of Kentucky. He's running for governor of Kentucky. You can learn more about him at CameronForKentucky.com. I'll have links in my show notes. It's been amazing having you on. It's good to see you again, my friend. Anything you want to leave the listeners and viewers of Liberty and Justice with before we sign off?
Yeah, look, I just tell you, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching, Matt. He's a good man with a great show, and I'm honored to spend some time with you guys today.
All right. Well, thank you, General Cameron.